Okay, so I finally got around to finishing Pokemon Brilliant Diamond. Now, not a lot of people know this, but I'm a bit of a Pokemon fan. As such, my thoughts on Pokemon Brilliant Diamond and Shining Pearl are complicated to say the least. I wasn't even going to script this video, but every time I tried to record it, it just evolved into rambling. I mean, this video is still going to be rambling, but at least it's going to be a bit more structured, I guess. Anyway, did I enjoy playing this game on a base level? Yes. But is it a good game? Well, it's a Pokemon game, so it has a base level of enjoyment that every Pokemon game has. But if I'm being honest, these games are probably the lowest quality Pokemon games of all time. And it hurts me to say this because, I had fun playing the game, and I'll probably still play it because I'm a shill, but I cannot, in good faith, recommend these games over any other Pokemon game ever made. Well, except for the ones they're remaking. Pokemon Brilliant Diamond and Shining Pearl are faithful to a fault. Pretty much every issue I have with the game leads back to the idea that these are faithful remakes. And whenever they make a change, it actually improved the game, in my opinion. Types and movesets have been updated to current standards across the board. These games don't change much, but they aren't so faithful that they'll remove Fairy type. Some late game trainer movesets actually changed pretty drastically too, and for the better. Like Flint would use Minimize on his Drifblim and then Baton Pass into his Infernape, so I just couldn't hit it. It was annoying, but that level of thought's pretty rare in a Pokemon AI. The Underground was overhauled completely. The secret bases were gutted, but the ability to catch extra wild Pokemon down here at least gives you something to do besides dig for fossils, which is all you could do in the originals if you had no friends. Not that I didn't have friends or anything. That'd be crazy. Ball capsules have a lot more depth this time around. Literally. They're 3D now, and it feels like there's a lot more variety to them than in the original. You can't spell out words anymore, as far as I'm aware, but everything else looks pretty good. Super contests were updated to be these weird rhythm games, which at the very least is a very neat concept. I'm not 100% on the execution though, because I've never paid much attention to the super contests ever, really. But, at least they changed something, at least they did something to try to make it unique. Pokemon walk behind you now when you get far enough in the game. It's cute, but some of these Pokemon walk really slowly. Really slowly. Come on, man, I got places to be. The biggest change overall is that you don't need to teach your Pokemon HMs to get around anymore. You still need to use HMs, but you just call your resident beaver to take care of the problem. No big deal. My favorite change is an overall movement and gameplay speed increase. The 360 movement has issues, quite a few, but I definitely prefer it to the original's incredibly slow gameplay. Walking, running, surfing, battling, everything in the original games just felt really slow and bad. And that's it. Everything else is exactly like you imagine Diamond or Pearl, just with a fresh coat of paint. It feels safe to say that these games completely eclipse their original counterparts, but unfortunately, they also carry a lot of their baggage with them. The biggest issue with this game is its lack of identity. This goes for the remakes, which obviously don't change much from the originals, but it also goes for the originals, which have pretty much nothing original to offer. Sinnoh in Diamond and Pearl has a regional Pokédex of 151. 107 new Pokemon were added in Generation 4, and that actually sounds like a pretty solid ratio of new to old Pokemon. But actually 14 of those are legendaries, so you can't really use those in the main game. But hey, 93 new Pokemon is still pretty solid, right? But actually 18 of them aren't available until post-game, so 75 new Pokemon. That's still a pretty good ratio of new to old, right? On paper, yes, but unfortunately it's the distribution of the Pokédex itself that's the problem. Let's find out how many of these new Pokemon you'll actually see in the wild. Out of these 75, there are 36 evolutionary lines and 6 babies that evolve into Pokemon we already know. Out of these 36, 3 of them are the starters, obviously, so they're not in the wild. 5 of them are only found on honey trees, which is an 8-hour gamble if you want to see something specific. It's not exactly something you're going to be walking into the wild and finding. Skuntank, Honchkrow, Peruglia, and Mismagius are version exclusives, so we got to take out 2 of them because you only see 2 of them out of the 4 in the whole game, depending on which version you're using. Rampardos and Bastiodon are the fossils, so you're not seeing those in the wild, that's 2 more. Skorupi and Carnivine only appear in the Great Marsh on random days, so they are also not going to really be found in the wild unless you're hunting them. It's not something you're just going to be able to see, it's not very common. Hippopotas have a 5% chance of spawning in Maniac Tunnel without spending the extra time hunting for Unknown, so Hippowdon, again, you're not really going to be seeing it unless you're looking for it. Chatot can be traded pretty early on in Eterna City, but if you don't do that, then your first time seeing a Chatot, especially in the wild, your first ability to get one is going to be after Spear Pillar, right before Sunyshore, which is an electric type gym. Why would you add a flying type right then? It's really weird. Why is Chatot here? I'm really confused about this one. Drifloon is only encountered on Friday afternoons at Valley Windworks, so you better hope you didn't start playing on a Friday, because if you beat Valley Windworks on Friday, you don't get Drifloon for a whole week. So again, not going to be seeing it really in the wild unless you're looking for it. Riolu is gifted to you. He's just kind of gifted to you, so, you know, you're not going to be seeing Lucario in the wild. And the last one I'm taking off the board is Spiritomb. I don't think I need to explain why I'm taking Spiritomb off the board. So our final score is 17. These are the brand new Pokemon that you can find in the wild. And actually the number 16, because I forgot to include Gible. Oops. And I know you can do this with every region, and starting with Gen 6, I'd imagine that number is even smaller. But the problem is especially exacerbated by the Pokédex only having 150 total Pokemon. Walking through the grass in Diamond and Pearl just feels like a chore, because you're pretty much guaranteed to find absolutely nothing of substance. But hey, with a good pool of older Pokemon, I'm sure the problem can be alleviated. It's not. It's not alleviated, it's actually worse. The Geodude and Zubat lines are found all over the region, both in every single cave and outside in various places, depending on time of day in Zubat's case. You saw how many Pokemon I marked off for being kinda difficult to find, or like really just out of the way for you to find, but then Geodude is like everywhere. Geodude and Graveler are all over the place in this region. Even the place that you find Hippopotas at a 5% chance, guess what the 95% chance is? Geodude. Of course. The game just introduces Bibarel and Shinx and Starly, and then just kind of puts them all over the place. Oh, and Kricketot as well. Kricketune is in a lot of places. But it's mainly going to be Bibarel and Geodude and Graveler and Zubat. That's just what you're running into throughout the entire region. The game feels like they're embarrassed of their new Pokemon, and just defaults to the most boring type of nostalgia pandering possible. And yes, I understand the Underground does make a lot of these Pokemon easier to obtain, but it doesn't stop you from spamming the repels so you don't run into the exact same Pokemon for 20 plus hours in the main game. Grass is going to have all the same boring Pokemon that you saw by like the first gym. And trainer battles have the exact same problem. Fishermen only use Magikarp, Bird Keepers only use Starly, Hikers only use Geodude and Machop, Black Belts only use Machop and Meditite, Psychics only use Abra and Meditite. By the way, speaking of Meditite, Sinnoh has such a lack of variety and identity that the Sinnoh sound in Heart Gold Soul Silver, which is used to find Sinnoh Pokemon in that game, that includes Meditite. Meditite's a Hoenn Pokemon. But anyway, battles in this game are boring and by the numbers, and nowhere is that more apparent than with Team Galactic. Team Galactic is a joke. An absolute joke. So, the admins of Team Galactic each have their own aces on their teams, Skuntank, Perugly, and Toxicroak. This means that because of the limited Pokédex, none of the grunts you fight can have Pokemon that are better than these, which is, no offense, not a very high bar. That just means that you fight a lot of Wurmple, Stunky, and Glameow for the whole game. This is so bad that within the same event that you fight God, you're still fighting a trainer with a Wurmple and a Silcoon and a Beautifly. Like, come on. The last line of defense, literally 3 fights before God, you're fighting a Croagunk, a Glameow, a Stunky, and a Dustox. It's insane. It's just the absolute narrative dissonance here is ridiculous. The absolute worst part about Team Galactic is that they're all over the place. You fight them so much, but every fight is exactly the same because they've been using the exact same Pokemon since you first encountered them at Valley Windworks. Anyway, I've harped on the Pokemon variety enough. Let's talk about the region of Sinnoh itself. Sinnoh is really, really boring. Sorry, sometimes you have to bury the lead, but I feel like that's not something I need to do in this case. Pokemon games are pretty by the numbers design-wise, obviously, but Sinnoh is really phoning it in. Caves that are just caves. Forest that's just a forest. Graveyard Tower that exists because Lavender Town exists, and we gotta hit that quota for the things that are minus a Gen 1. There's a tall grass route because Gen 3. There's an evil team base because, every game has to have an evil team base, but there's not even anything special. It's just the warp panels from the same bases that we've been doing for like 4 games at this point. In the latter half of the game, there's a bit more variety, but it's only a little bit. Mount Coronet, even though it's big and imposing, just feels like a cave until you get to the peak, where it feels like it's just all the snow that we went to the route before. But snow is new, so it balances out to being like, okay. Gotta give him credit there. Victory Road doesn't have anything special going for it, it's just another cave. Iron Island and the Orberg Mines are pretty similar, but different enough from caves that are generic to feel unique and they get a pass. That said, Iron Island only has 1 wild steel type, and it's Steelix. You literally have an available steel type to put here, guys. I don't know why. Where's Bronzong? Where's Bronzong? Why isn't he here? Weirdly enough, the most original places in this game are completely optional. Iron Island is completely optional, but it was kind of cavey, so I just kind of put it in before. But Celestion Ruins is just another cave, really, but it has a unique design, and you can only catch Unknown there, but it just adds some visual variety. It's nice that it's here. Fuego Ironworks is a place that I always forget exists, but it has the spinning floor puzzles from the rocket base, and again, it's visually and thematically unique. which makes up for the fact that it's using the spinning puzzle things from, 4 games ago. There's the Old Chateau, which really makes it obvious that the Lost Tower is just there to remind you of Lavender Town, because Old Chateau is way better. There's the Trophy Garden, it's okay. The marsh is unique, but it's annoying. I don't like the mud. I just don't like the mud at all. It's kind of sucky. The 3 lakes are also pretty neat, even if they feel a little similar to each other. Besides Lake Valor, because it has self-repair technology. The towns don't fare much better. They try, but they don't really hit the mark and would have benefited from an updated art style. If only these weren't faithful remakes. I'll get to the art style in a second, but let's focus on how all these towns just kinda aren't all that great. Fuego Town is supposed to be a small town covered in beautiful flowers. You're supposed to walk in and be like, wow, this is pretty, but you just don't get that feeling from flower tiles pasted on a grid. Even in the meadow, a glowy petal filter doesn't impress me. These are the exact same tiles. This wasn't impressive on the DS, and this isn't impressive in a 1-to-1 remake. Eterna City and Celestic Town both have the similar theme of being old towns with a deep connection to history, but aside from the music, all that really points to this aesthetically are the statue in Eterna and the ruins in Celestic. The worst part is that they don't even look like they're placed organically in the town. They seem like they're just sort of plopped in the middle of a regular town. The buildings and geography look identical to everywhere else in the region, and none of these buildings really give off any impression besides house. The closest any towns get to feeling unique are Jubilife and Veilstone, and that's only because they mix in some skyscrapers. I wouldn't be pushing so hard on the environments feeling unique in this game if it wasn't for the fact that the previous generation did everything better. Let's compare towns in Sinnoh to towns in Hoenn, the region that came prior. The first few towns I'll give a pass to on both ends. Visually, they're nothing to write home about. Slateport City has a direct parallel to Canalave City. Verdant-Turf, I guess you can compare to Floaroma Town. And I guess Lily Cove and Sunny Shore are similar since they're both kind of port towns. They're both like beach towns, it kind of works. That's basically where the comparisons stop though, because what does Sinnoh have that really compares to Fall Arbor, Fort Tree, Lava Ridge, Pacific Log, Setopolis, Moss Deep, and even less impressive towns like Dewford? Nothing. But it could. Brilliant Diamond and Shining Pearl were marketed as faithful remakes, but the whole point of a remake is to improve the originals that you're remaking. Those towns I mentioned previously could have been visually spiced up to give players the same feeling they might have had visiting them for the first time on the limited hardware capabilities of the DS. For example, let's look at the previous generation of remakes, Ruby and Sapphire. Well, Omega Ruby, Alpha Sapphire. Mauville City in the originals was home to the Electric Gym, it had a casino, it had the bike shop, and it even had an abandoned expansion called New Mauville. It was very obvious that this place was meant to be like the central hub of Hoenn, but it's a town that has like 6 buildings. Not exactly impressive. So they changed it up, and Mauville City got completely revamped. Now it's very obviously the most populous city in Hoenn. Some people liked the changes, some people didn't, but the point is that they saw something that could have been improved and they changed it. They also tied the abandoned ship to New Mauville, renaming it to Sea Mauville and changing it from a ship to like some ocean expansion area. It stops the ship from being disconnected from everything else in the region, and it also makes Mauville as a location feel more important. Because Brilliant Diamond and Shining Pearl are authentic remakes, they're meant to be just the same game, just with a fresh coat of paint. They don't get the chance to expand on things like this. They miss out on the potential of world building and improving what they can to make the game feel current gen. Give these places some extra depth, make these places feel like real places rather than just a city you walk through and then you fight a gym and you leave. These games being faithful remakes is also why we have the presentation we have now. The chibi style is obviously meant to imitate the originals, but that's easy to poke fun at. It doesn't look good, we get it, but the faithful remake thing also ends up having a lot of subtle effects. For example, in the original Diamond and Pearl, important trainers would have a splash screen to make them feel cool, and these are present in the remakes as well, but they're copied exactly to the remakes, posing and all. This means that the important trainers will start a fight in their original pose from the original games, then cut to a different pose, then back to the original one, then back to the second animated pose. There's also absolutely no movement in the original poses, it just looks really weird and stilted and bad. This is a nonsensical chain of events that only exists because the game is a faithful remake. If this was an original game, they would have done something entirely different. Heck, even going back to previous remakes, Let's Go had this, sort of, but it didn't like jump in between it. It just had the slide on because that's what they did in Gen 1, and then it just jumps to what they would normally do. Omega Ruby Alpha Sapphire didn't have this issue because they hadn't been using 3D models yet, so they had to do something entirely different, and I think it looks better than what's going on here. And if you want to look at games that aren't remakes, Sword and Shield don't do this because it makes no sense to do it. It just looks weird and stupid. Like I said at the beginning, I had a lot of fun with this game, but if there was one region that they should have actually went completely full throttle on updating it to make it good, it was Sinnoh. Because there's some potential here, but they really kind of missed the mark, and then they kind of improved it in Platinum, but it still was just okay. They really could have pushed it even further, but they really didn't. They just kind of kept it the way it was, which was a very weird stance to take on one of the most polarizing regions that Pokemon's ever made. And speaking of polarizing regions, just to end this off, don't remake Black and White, please. They're perfect the way they are. I just port them. Just port them, maybe add fairy type to the engine. That's all you gotta do. That's it. Thank you for watching. This was not a project I expected to be a long-term thing. I expected to get this out pretty quick, but you know, here we are. I'm going to be doing other things like this in the future. Wanted to talk about this before Legends Arceus came out, and that's coming out very soon, and I will probably make a video on that as well, just my thoughts on that. Hopefully, it won't take as long as this one did to come out. Wink. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe, all that fun stuff, and I'll see you next time. Goodbye!